we're going to use the table on the following page to answer questions 1 through 5 about the population of the Northeast region. So here's the table. Here's the Northeast region. You might want to take a picture of this, you might want to take a picture because I do not reference back and forth throughout the question. So if you have a cell phone, it might be helpful, or take a screenshot and have it saved somewhere so that you can reference this table while we're going through the problem. So the first thing that we're going to find is the child dependency ratio in the Northeast region. So remember, to find child dependency, we are looking at the children, which is ages 0 to 14, compared to the working class, which is 15 to 64. So you've got to total those up. So how many children do we have? Well, if you add up everybody who's under 15 years old, you'll get 10,034 people. Then the working class, right? I said I wouldn't reference it, but the working class, you're going to add up all of these, because those people are the working class, and you end up with 37,101. So when I divide these, I end up with a decimal of 0.2704. We're going to round to the nearest thousandths. Zero's a thousandth place, 4 rounds down. So my child dependency ratio is 0.270. And what kind of ratio is this? Well, this is part to part, because children are part of the population and the workforce is part of the population, and therefore this is part to part. Remember, with part to part ratios, you cannot write them as decimals or as fractions. You cannot write them as percents. You can write them as decimals. You can write them as fractions. Decimal is actually the preferred method of child dependency ratios, or really most part-to-part ratios are preferred in decimal form. All right, number 2, what is the old age dependency ratio? So now we're taking the oldies, which are 65 and over, compared to the working class. These dependency ratios are always compared to the working class, the 15 to 64. So when you add up our oldies, which is everybody who's 65 and over, we end up with 6,598 compared to the working class of 37,101. Again, we're going to write that as a decimal to the nearest thousandth, so I get 0.1178. Thousandth place, look past, 8 rounds up, so 0.178. That decimal is my old age dependency ratio. And again, this is part to part because oldies are part of the population and the working class is part of the population. And finally, excuse me, age dependency ratio. That's where we take the children plus the oldies and we divide by the working class. So I've got the 10,034 children plus the 6,598 oldies compared to the 37,101 working class. That gives me a numerator of 16,632 compared to 37,101. When I divide that, I get 0.4482. 8's my thousandth place, so I look at 2 rounds down, 0.448. And that is my age dependency ratio. Again, part to part. The numerator is part of my population, the denominator is part of my population, and therefore this is a part-to-part ratio. Now we're going to do some interpretations. First, with the child dependency ratio. So remember, our child dependency ratio was 0.270. If we made that a fraction, we would put it over 1. So the child dependency ratio, there are 0.270 children dependent on each working class person. It's essentially what it means. So everybody who's part of the working class, right, they're supporting, a little over a quarter of a child in terms of the financial aspect of the world. Now the old age dependency ratio, our old age was 178. Again, make it a fraction by putting it over 1. So there are 0.178 oldies dependent on each working class person. And I say on each because you'll notice the denominator is 1, because to make any number a fraction, we can just put it over 1. So that's why it's on each working class person. And then we get to the age dependency ratio. And the age dependency ratio is 0.448. So we would say there are 0.448 dependents on each working class person. When I say dependence, children and old people are dependent. They're not working. They're dependent on somebody else to provide to them. So we just call them dependents. We don't have to differentiate and say children and old people who are dependent. You could put those together, but it simply is all the people who are dependent on each working class person. Okay. Number 5. Now, if ages 65 to 69 are not considered old but kept in the workforce, how does that change our age dependency ratio? Meaning, the working age is now 15 to 69, and oldies start at 70. It seems that a lot of people are working longer now. Fewer people are retiring at 64, and they're working closer to 70. So if you think about that, so before, our working class only went to 64, and it was 37,101. And our oldies, which started at 65, was at 65,98. And if we're taking that one age group and we're moving it, so we're taking that 65 to 69, which there were 2,207 of them, we're taking them out of the oldies and putting them into the working class. Does that make sense? We're taking that age group, and since that's the number of people in the age group from the table, that's what we're using. So our new working class has 37,308, and our oldies have changed to 4391. So these are the new groupings. So now when I want to find my age dependency ratio, age dependency, remember, is children, which has stayed the same, plus the oldies, which has decreased, and it's divided by our working class. So I've got 14,425 divided by 373.08, and when I divide, I get 0.387. So you can see it's actually a huge difference. We were at, the dependency ratio before was 0.448. So this is what it was before, and it dropped to 0.387 by people working an extra 5 years. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want to work till I'm 70. So by altering the age groups of when do you become old, when are you still in the working class, right, that will affect the age dependency ratio. If people work until they're 70, we have less people to care for and more people doing the caring, right, because the working class got bigger. There's more people to take on the burden and less people to support, so that's going to make the ratio go down.